Today on the podcast, we have Ryan Weaver. Ryan served as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot in the U.S. Army for 20 years before retiring and then becoming a country music artist. He's the patriotic voice of the PBR, Professional Bull Riders, and he released the Celebrate America EP with the single Never Forgotten, which is a tribute to his fallen brother, U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer Aaron Weaver. His passion for music is so evident when you see him perform live, and I'm just grateful that Ryan could join us. So I've got Ryan Weaver with me today on this episode of Goalposts. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate you having me, and it's always good to be on a Great Friends podcast.
Thank you. So Ryan, you have such an interesting story. I wanted to just have an opportunity to share it. Give us a little bit of background. Tell us about yourself and kind of walk us through your personal and professional journey.
Well, to give the Cliff Notes version of it, I joined the military straight out of high school and followed in my two brothers' footsteps. They were both airborne rangers and then transitioned over to be aviators later on in their careers. I was a military intelligence analyst initially and then transitioned myself to be a warrant officer and turned into a Black Hawk Aviator. Was deployed to Iraq in 2003. My brother Aaron was also deployed there with me. And then on January 8th in 2004, he was a passenger in the back of a Medivac helicopter. He was actually a cancer survivor and was non-deployable and got a waiver to be deployed there. And he was a passenger in the back of a Medivac helicopter when it was shot down and killed everyone on board. And I became a one-time Gold Star family member at that point. Before, when I was in flight school, was doing karaoke and singing competitions and started writing songs in Iraq. And when that happened, I was passionate about the songwriting and I absolutely loved performing. I decided to chase this dream of being a country music artist at the national level in his honor. And then as I progressed through the whole my career of going through the club scene, the festival scene, opening for national acts, and then performing for the Professional Bull Riders. And along that path, my brother-in-law, Randy Billings, in 2013, was piloting a Black Hawk in Afghanistan. And he was also killed in action. The Black Hawk was shot down. And we became a two-time Gold Star family member. I became a two-time Gold Star family member at that point. And it gave me more fuel to want to be successful in this amazing country of ours where we're free to chase our dreams because of the sacrifices that they make. And here I am today as the patriotic voice of Professional Bull Riders and a multiple partner brand with multiple companies across the United States as an independent artist without a record label, record deal, or management. And it's really been an amazing journey.
That is amazing. Well, first, let me say thank you for your service and thank you for your family service. You grew up in a big family. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you grew up.
Well, I grew up all over the state of Florida. And it was, we had a huge family with steps, halves, and real with cornucopia of siblings, I call it. But we moved all around the state of Florida, but ended up settling into Citrus County in West Central Florida, about 50 miles west of Orlando, where I graduated from Citrus High School there. And then, of course, once I went into the military, I traveled all over the world with the United States Army.
Well, I know it wasn't too long ago, maybe just a few years ago, where you had the opportunity to go home and perform during, I think it's the Gasparilla Bowl, that you were the featured entertainment and performer. And so what was it like being able to go home and share your talent in that moment?
Well, I had already been touring most of my initial career. I started off down in Southeast Alabama as far as the music was concerned while I was still on active duty, playing the club shows and the festival shows, in the Southeast, and Florida, obviously being my home state where I came from initially. It was really cool to get back to. I had done some pretty significant shows down there, but I hadn't been back down to Florida in quite some time. And it was cool to get down there to perform before the Gasparilla Bowl and to sing the national anthem there. And I got to meet Kevin Carter. You're a common friend of both of ours. And he was such a kind person. Actually, I might have met him before that at an event, but really got to hang out with him for an extended period of time and race against him on lawnmowers. which I was afraid he was going to beat me down when I actually beat him. But that was all pure luck and not being afraid of anything when it came to those bad boy mowers. But it was a great time. It was an amazing experience for me.
That's wonderful. So, what are some of the lessons that you took from your time in the military? And you spent 20 something years in the military before you became a full-time entertainer. What are some of those lessons that you took from the military and implemented them into your daily life?
Well, we have this saying in the military: "This hurry up and wait" is what we get used to. And with 20 years, 8 months, and 7 days, and I'd give you the hours if I could remember when I raised my hand. You kind of learn that the process that you have to go through is going to take some time, and then all of a sudden everything happens, and then you got to be able to figure out how to adapt to a quickly changing situation. And that was kind of the norm in the military, as I would say it. And for the music business, one of the baseline I perspectives that I gained from the military was that there were some of the processes I was going to go through were going to take some time, and when I got to a certain point and when something was happening, I needed to make sure to seize the moment and make the best of it, because we also know that those moments could be fleeting. And having the discipline to keep my mind on the prize really was a big thing that the military inspired in me, making sure that I was focused on performing and expanding my career and expanding my brand and looking outside of the box and the way that everybody seemed to be thinking at the time, to try and create opportunities for myself. And then, there are distractions that seem to take all the when you're performing in the bars and that kind of scene, and the girls are there, and the alcohol's there, and you have so many opportunities to screw up. um, Focusing on the opportunity to be successful. That's what the military really, instills in you, because when you're up in the air flying a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment and 11 people are in the back and their lives are, in your hands, essentially, you need to focus on the task at hand. And there are multiple tasks happening at one time while you're flying across the land where so many things are coming at you. So I think that those opportunities that were presented to me and jumping on those, I think, was probably one of the biggest things that I learned from the military, along with the other things I just mentioned.
That's great. So, I think about kind of the transition and career change from military to music. That is a definite career change. And you
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
Kevin Carter. We had recently had an interview with Kevin Carter and talked about, he was 38 years old when he retired from the NFL and had to figure out, now what? Now what am I doing with my career? And my time in the NFL, we really did compare um, NFL players that are looking for their second chapter to be very similar to someone who gets out of the military and looks at life and says, okay, now what am I doing? So there's some very similar thoughts there. How did you make that transition, and how did you have the ability to kind of cross over one to the other?
Well, the folks that are listening out there, I hope that they really get to really hear this part, because for me, this was probably the most important part of my career in trying to find success as a country music artist, because I was doing it for a few years before I actually got out of the military. I was an intelligence analyst, a Black Hawk Aviator, an instructor, and an officer in the military. I got out of the military, moved to Nashville. Fortunately, I had a retirement check coming in, because that was one of my lifesavers. But I became a bar back at the Wild Horse Saloon, a personal trainer, and was going to college full time to get a degree in aeronautics and a minor in management. You want to talk about a complete shift from everything that I knew, this solid life with a career and a salary going on, to all of a sudden I'm taking care of personal responsibilities, but trying to maintain a professional career in the music business, along with having to have three jobs, because college was a job at the time. And being able to transition into that lifestyle. It took me a little bit to get on my feet. It took me a little bit to get really focused on the music. Kara, my wife, had a lot to do with being able to still pursue country music while I was also working at a job full time with them. I'm grateful that I met her. I'm grateful that her family was so open and giving and understood my dreams when it came to that. So I have a lot to attribute to meeting my wife, a lot to my success to attribute to meeting my wife. But I will say that having the motivation to get through the difficult times when you have such a significant transition really has a lot to do with where I came from. And just like with Kevin Carter, I mean, the persistence to go through high school, I mean, little league football and then middle school football and high school football to getting through, into collegiate football, the chances of getting into the NFL, and for him to be able to find this, just incredible success he did as an athlete. Those are all planted seeds for what he was going to have to do afterwards, which was completely transition, use what he had before, use the skills that he had before. I mean, obviously, anybody talks to the guy for 5 minutes and you know that he has a way of commanding a room and talking to people and communicating. Those are all skills that he had to have as a leader in the NFL and prior to that as well. And he used those skills in an amazing way, because I'm one of his biggest fans when I watch his broadcast too. It was the same thing with me. I had to be able to think outside the box, just like I had to do in the military, to figure out how I was going to be able to make my career a success as an independent artist. Now, I want to say something else, and I know this is kind of a long answer, but there's something else important that everybody needs to target in on. I started actively and only doing country music. I can't say actively, but only doing country music, along with my side career, making music and my branding and my partner brands my primary sources of income. I started doing that after I retired from the military. So I had already been in for almost 21 years, and I started doing this. Well, everybody in Nashville, and you know as well as I do, focuses on your age. They focus on your music and they focus on your talents, but it's amazing how much they focus on your age before they focus on anything else, regardless of what you have to offer. And that was the biggest thing I had to deal with. Well, I mean, it was interesting to know that I was almost 45 years old when I replaced Steven Tyler as the headliner in T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, and my next show was Madison Square Garden and then AT&T Stadium in front of 46,000 people, and signed on with 4 partner brands when I was almost 45 years old. So anything is possible if you put your mind to it, and I'm the example of that.
Oh, that's great. And I love that answer. You mentioned a couple of those accomplishments. So I'm going to transition into that question. Of everything you've been able to accomplish, what would you say, Ryan, are you most proud of?
I think that to be able to say, you want me to say that again because of that back feedback? I'll pause. Okay. The best accomplishment, if I look at my career, the things that I've been able to do, I've had so many highlights. Like to play on the Grand Ole Opry stage with Charlie Daniels introducing you on September 11th with no record deal, with no formal management, with no song on the radio. That was an amazing accomplishment. Performing on the Ryman Auditorium stage, playing between Ted Nugent and Michael W. Smith in Bridgestone Arena. After now, we've played Bridgestone Arena 7 times with no record deal, song on the radio. Those are all amazing things to be able to say as an independent artist who a record label won't talk to, management will barely talk to. Having my own partner brands, the overall picture of 2018 and 2019, combine those two together were my greatest accomplishments, because Burn, my music video, was put out to national television and across the internationally, almost at 500,000 streams right now, doing pretty good as an independent artist with no promotion. But to be able to say that I was doing a show in Colorado Springs and the CEO of the PBR loved my story, and we treat every single show as our last show. Loved my story, loved the show, loved the performance, and he believed in me enough to be able to say, Ryan, you know who headlined our Saturday night last year at the World Finals? Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. You know who's going to headline our Saturday night at the World Finals this year in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena to a sold-out crowd? You are. To be able to say that I was able to make that happen with no record label, no record deal, no formal management, I would say that accomplishment is the proudest that I've had.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Well, you and I worked together on some events through the PBR, and one of those that I think was such a cool moment that I'd love for you to talk about is the opportunity to perform here in Nashville with a very, very special guest that was unexpected for the crowd, and you were able to welcome him onto the stage in Nashville, and you basically made his dream come true to perform. So tell us about that.
Well, I think first off, let me back up. You got me on his show as my PR agent. You got me on his show, and I'm extremely grateful for that because we got on his show, and that established a rapport and a relationship with us. And you also reached out to with my invitation for him to perform and coordinated all that. So I can't thank you enough for that. But Huckabee, I was on the Huckabee show and performed That's What America Means to Me on the Huckabee show, which was incredible. And then I knew that he was a bass player, so we brought him the bass that was actually from our Burn music video. Which was really cool to give him that, and he put that on his set. So it was neat to have that on his set as well. But such a kind person, such a genuine, caring person. You spend 5 minutes with the man, and you know when he's shaking your hand and looking you in the eye that he's as real as it gets. And it was an honor when we performed at Bridgestone Arena with the professional bull riders, not only to have him on stage with me for That's What America Means to Me, when we lit up Bridgestone Arena with all the cell phone lights, and there's a video of it if folks want to check that out. Pretty incredible performance with him. But his daughter came in, and the craziness that ensued from her having to have the Secret Service and all that stuff with it. But to be able to say that I stood on stage with the great Governor Huckabee and know what it meant to him and his family, of all the things he's been able to do in his life, to know that we provided that opportunity for him to live a dream moment, that was just an incredible situation for me too.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight. So, Ryan, what advice would you give to a young professional just starting out in their career, whether it's career in music or career in the military, whatever it may be? What advice, knowing what you know now, what advice would you share and give with them?
But there are a few pieces of information that if I was, back in the day when I first got things started and learned from a long time ago, first and foremost, you got to put the work in. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're not willing to work harder than everybody on that stage that's with you, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to get anywhere. Bottom line, if you're not willing to work hard, it's not going to matter. I was always when shows first started, I was always the first one there, setting up sound, setting up the banners behind the stage, all of those things. And I was the last one leaving, tearing it all down. And once I got to the point to where I had other people that could do that for me, it was amazing. But I still was willing to put in the work and the time to make sure that everything was done the right way. Second, came up to Nashville in 2006 to the George Jones University. And I don't know if you heard about that, but when it was going on, George Jones essentially invited a bunch of folks to come in to his ranch, and they got a bunch of speakers that got up and talked about the music business, straightforward, with people getting into the management side, the publishing side, the whatever side of the business it was going to be. They covered all aspects of it. Essentially, it was $300 to hand out your business card. That's about what it was. So it was a conference that you went to, but I got some valuable information. It was one of the first people that ever got up to speak was a guy named Wayne Halper that everybody knows in Nashville. He was, I guess, the head of was it Capitol Records or the operations head of operations when Garth Brooks took off, and now he's an entertainment lawyer. But one of the things that he said and was one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, and really took it to heart. And he said, 1,000 people come to Nashville a day with a guitar and a dream, and 1,000 people leave Nashville a day with an empty guitar case because they had to sell it so they could get back home because they didn't learn about the music business. Not because they weren't passionate enough and not because they weren't talented enough, but because they didn't learn about the music business. Well, one of the things that, as we saw during the transition over the last few years, is that music is not what's going to make you money if you're an independent artist. Everything else that you do, merchandising, performances, branding, all of those things are what are going to make you money. The music is 0.007 cents a stream on streaming outlets right now. The music is going to help you get these other things, yes, but it's not what's going to make you the money. And if there is a moment in time, COVID-19 is proving that to everybody out there. Because if you can't perform, if you can't go to work, if you can't do the things that you need to do, the music streams are not making you money. So what do you need to do? The third piece of information that I could give to anybody out there that's getting into this: brand yourself. Make partner brands with other companies. If you're looking at this video right now, I'm wearing one of my major partner brands with the second biggest military clothing company in the entire United States. And this is my primary source of income. Right behind me, I have Liberty Home Concealment flags. That's actually my second biggest source of income right now. I'm not having to perform right now. My bills are paid. I got cowboy boots in almost 30 stores across the nation because I became a partner brand with Lane Boots. I'm telling you, artists out there, if you're listening to this, the best piece of advice that I can give you is figure out how to make your brand marketable to companies that want to partner with you, because the royalties on 5,000 pairs of boots that are $300 a pair is going to be a whole lot higher than 0.007 cents a stream. Just saying.
Right. Oh, that's great advice. That's great advice. And you've done such a nice job in finding the right partner brands and folks that have a very patriotic loyalty, and they want to partner with you. So it's been a great relationship for you and your partner brands. That's awesome. And we'll make sure to link those brands in the story as well. So Ryan, I would love to ask you one last question before we close out. Right now, in challenging times, we all need a little bit of comedy and some comic relief. It For me, a really good belly laugh. You know, if you don't laugh, you cry. So
right.
I love behind the scenes stories of something hilarious that may have happened in your journey, whether it's a funny military story or a funny story behind the backstage before you came out for a show. Is there any story that you can dig up? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but if there's any story that you can share with us that's just a little bit of hilarious comic relief, I'd love to hear one.
I have a ton of stories that I could tell you about that are funny and hilarious, because I'm a bit goofy when it comes to behind the scenes stuff. But I will tell you a story that for me stands out among all of them. And I was on a stage in Defuniak Springs, Osusanas, down in Florida, I believe it was, and I had my guitar player was wired at the time. We all, this is one of the learning experiences to go wireless, quite honestly. But my guitar player was wired at the time, and we're on this it's relatively small stage, but I bounce all around during my shows, and I'm all over the place, and he's rocking out and having a good time. And his guitar, his line to his guitar wrapped around my leg, and I tripped and yard sailed into the crowd, and ass over tea kettle, microphone goes flying, cowboy hats off. And I got, feet are up in the air, and I asked somebody to hand me the microphone. I stood up, I looked around, I said, well, that sucked. His guitar was unplugged, so we had to get him plugged back in, because I actually unplugged his quarter inch. I said, well, that sucked, and the crowd loved it. And, if you could just look at yourself with a little bit of humility and understand in those circumstances that it makes you more human when you make those kind of mistakes. Absolutely. That was one of the could have been one of the most embarrassing moments in my career, but it was actually turned out to be one of those things where I made a stronger connection with the crowd, let's say, directly.
Oh, I love it. I love hearing those behind the scenes stories that aren't normally shared in an interview. So thank you for sharing that. Ryan, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for your entertainment and keeping us, you know, motivated and entertained. I know you've had some fun things on social media, so we appreciate that. And I appreciate your time with us today on Goalpost. And just thank you again.
Thanks so much for having me.